no fear, Willie's here. Hello everyone, it's Willie. So this video is going to take you through the last question in the Higher RUAE paper. The comparison question it's also called, which is worth 5 marks. High five! So you can't miss it out. And this video will tell you exactly how to go about tackling the question. Good luck! This video is going to take you through the last question, or the comparison question, in the Higher Close Reading RUAE paper. It's worth noting that this question is worth 5 marks, which obviously works out at 5%, so you can't afford to miss it out. You're going to be asked to compare or contrast both passages and talk about ways that the writers either disagree, agree, or both. And those who are observant will notice that that spells out dab. And I'll do it now for you.
Watch me do my dab. Watch me do my dab. Watch him do his dab. Watch him do his dab.
If you've got about 15 minutes left or so, then my advice would be to jump to the comparison question, because it's probably easier to get that than maybe filling in 2 or 3 of the other questions at the end. Alright, so how do we go about it? Well, it's all about baby steps. Passage 1 will be highlighted by the time you've worked through all the questions, and obviously those who have seen the other highlighting video will know the importance of a highlighter in the close reading exam. So most of that, a lot of it will be highlighted by the time you've finished working your way through the other questions. Before you read passage 2 though, you need to have a wee look and see, is the comparison question either agree, disagree, or both, right? So how do the writers agree or disagree with each other, or there could be an element of both in there. Once you've got that in your head, then you need to start reading passage 2, and then as you're reading it, have your best friend ready. Voila! Hey! So you need to treat this question like a game. It's like playing a game of pairs or snap. As you work through passage 2, I want you to look for similarities and or differences between this passage and the first passage. So you're looking for ways that the writers either agree or disagree with each other, could be both. What areas or ideas do both passages cover? So it's all about comparing them. Go compare! Stop! Once you find a matching pair, how do you go about answering it? Right, well, the first step is highlight the quote in passage 2 that you think, oh wait, I've seen that over in passage 1, they talk about the same thing. So highlight the key phrase, then go back to passage 1, remember that half of that will be probably highlighted by this point, skim read through that, and then hopefully you'll find the matching pair, the one that either agrees with the writer in passage 2 or disagrees. Then do a wee number beside them. So for obviously your first one that you find, do a number 1 beside it, and then do a number 1 on the corresponding or the correlating idea in passage 1. Then once you've numbered both passage 1 and 2, write a wee note at the side of where you've written the number, what areas that they both agree or disagree about. Then basically you repeat these steps again until you've found your 3 pairs. If you're totally confused by what I've said, and that happens quite often in the classroom, then just have a wee look at me in action just now. Enjoy! Okay, so once you're finished with passage 1 and you've done all the questions for that, it'll look something like that if you followed my advice about highlighting. So once you get onto passage 2, first you need to see the question and see, are you looking for things the writers disagree on, agree on, or both. Once you get that in your head, then you need to start reading passage 2 just like you did passage 1. However, this time you need to have a highlighter ready and waiting for the pairs. So what you're doing is start here you're reading all the way down and you're looking for something that this writer agrees or disagrees with this writer. For example, if we're reading down, I'm seeing here, this writer says a new policy of cheap meat, eggs and cheese for everyone. This writer is talking about the cheapness of food. Similarly, this writer also talked about how food was cheap due to the intensive farming methods. So when they say addicted to cheap meat, fish and dairy products, for example, that's talking about how farming results in things being more affordable. You'll see that I've highlighted it in a different colour. I think that's quite good advice because a lot of this will be highlighted anyway, but if not, it doesn't matter because what you're about to do next is I'm going to number this one, number 1. Then I'm going to find its matching pair that I've highlighted and write a number 1. So that you don't forget by the time you've scrolled down the rest of passage 2, so you don't forget what these pairs are, at the side of it, write down a little note on what is it that they both say. So for example, I would just write intensive farming creates affordable food. So it's just a little reminder to myself, what is it that they both say? So just keep working your way down. So here's another example. The next paragraph, it talks about laying hens and the small spaces. So it says that they're going to cram in vast acres of birds. Okay, so this is talking about the conditions for the animals with intensive farming. So if we go back to passage 1, because you'll know this one really well by this time, remember, and you've highlighted a lot. So look, oh, up there, I've actually highlighted that already for an analysis question. So it's talking about cows crammed into barren pens on tiny patches of land. So we've got the same word, crammed. Now that's not always going to be as obvious, but this is a good example. So this time I'm going to write number 2. I'm going to go back to passage 2, I'm going to write number 2. And at the side I'm going to write the little note on what it is they both say again. So intensive farming and poor conditions for animals, because that's what the both writers are agreeing here. So it's just a little note to remind myself, what is it that they both say? What area is it that they both agree with? Right, and one more, because we're looking for 3 pairs, remember? So we're going to keep reading on. Now remember, if you get to here and you found 3 pairs, technically, if you're happy with the pairs, you don't need to read the rest of this passage because you're going to be running out of time. Sometimes it's a good practice to read it to see what's happening, but if I've found 3 pairs here and you've only got a few minutes to go, just stop there. So this passage is talking about how farming produces cheap meat and dairy products to our tables. Before that, we obtained most of our calories from cereal and vegetables. So that's saying that our diet has changed. And then similarly, if we go over to this passage, it talks about how things that were once delicacies, and I've highlighted that already, such as smoked salmon, are cheap as chips. Now this isn't to do with the cheapness, because we've already said that. This is to do with how intensive farming has changed our diet. So that is the link here. So intensive farming has changed our eating habits, you could maybe say, or our diet. Okay, so that's the 3 pairs done. If you're happy with those, sometimes it's good to have a little extra one, but if you're happy with those and you've got a few minutes to go, that's it. So the key things to remember: find your pairs, just remember the game of snap that you're looking for, either things you agree or disagree on. Look for keywords that they might have in common, like cheap we've got in both passages, crammed we've got in both passages. Number the pairs, do them in a different highlight colour perhaps as well, so that it stands out from your other highlights on passage 1. And lastly, don't forget to do a little note at the side on what both say. And that's it. ABC, easy as 1, 2, 3, oh! Although that might look like a lot of effort, it isn't really. Most of the work is just finding your quotes and then matching it up with the other passage and how they either agree or disagree or both. Once you've done the quoting and the matching, that's most of the work. And as you know, you're looking for 3 pairs because 3 is the magic number. Alright, so now I've shown you what to do, it's time for you to have a shot. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples and I'd like you to try and work out what area is it that both the writers in both passages are in agreement about. So if you just have a reread of passage 1 first, and then passage 2, pause it, and then just think, what are both saying about intensive farming and the impact? Here's the pause. Alright, so were you right? So both writers are basically saying that intensive farming can have a damaging impact on wildlife and the environment, because passage 1 writer is saying that because of farming there are no birds, butterflies, beetles or shrubs, not a single blade of grass, and the only bees you have arrive by lorry. Writer passage 2 is mentioning the loss of hedgerows and wildlife, polluted airways, and the loss of traditional small farms thanks to these intense buildings. So that's it. So the area that they both are talking about is how the farming damages wildlife and the environment. Alright, we'll try one more. So what are both writers saying next? So just have a wee read of the 2 quotes I've written for passage 1 and then compare it to the quotes in passage 2. So if you just pause the video again and try and have a shot, what area of agreement do they have this time? So were you right? Hopefully. So basically, both writers are in agreement here about the fact that intensive farming may have a negative impact on our health. So passage 1 mentions how the cheap meat will be fatty and flaccid, and they also say that it'll have serious health problems linked to pollution caused by the farms getting built in the neighbourhoods. Passage 2 writer mentions the degenerative disease like coronary heart disease and cancer linked to our increased consumption of fatty foods, and that wartime Britons were basically much healthier because they had less meat and dairy in their diet. So hopefully you were right on that one too, and well done if you were. Woo, 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 bravo, yeah! Crowd goes wild. So hopefully now you know exactly what to do for a comparison question so you can tackle it head on and get it right, because it's all about just comparing the 2. Go compare passage 1 and passage 2. If you want to know how to go about answering the question now on paper, now that you've found all your pairs, then watch the next video. Don't forget, like, share, it's always good to share, subscribe, join Twitter on my page, and like my video. I'd love you forever. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Because remember, have no fear, will